Fantastic. How are you today, Rob?
Good, good. It's the middle of winter here, and it's a little bit cold, but not too bad. It's
Great.
probably
Middle,
like,
we got the hot the beginning of summer here. We're at about 118 degrees here in Scottsdale,
wow,
Arizona. So it's nice.
wow, yeah. It gets very hot there.
It does. But after the first couple of weeks, you kind of get used to it. I mean, you don't really go out there in the middle of the day, and other than that, you get used to it. So
I, I was talking to a
yeah.
friend who's he's got a military contract, and he was in the desert in California. He does 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off, and I think he said it was going to be like 130. And he said, so I'm going to drive home at night because I'm worried that my tires might melt on the road.
It's funny. I'm going to tomorrow. I'm driving to San Diego, and I'm saying to my wife, we're going to leave early, which is great because in the middle of the day, you're driving on the road, and it gets to be if it's 118, you got to add 10 degrees for the road, or even 20 degrees for the road. Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
San Diego's a nice place.
I'm looking forward to it. My kids have a tournament there, so we're going to have some fun. It's going to be
All
a
right.
nice
Do they
weekend.
play
Yeah.
lacrosse or something?
They do. They do. We're a lacrosse family. So the girls
Right.
have been playing for years, and it's a lot of fun. Great team.
How do I know that? I think I saw a photo on Facebook.
Hmm. It may be that those are kind of the only photos that my kids and I, and it's my alone time with my kids. So I usually, though this week my wife's coming, usually I just take my kids alone, which is getting trapped in the car. You got the road trip going. It's 4 hours, 5 hours. It's perfect. They just complain the whole time, and I just smile. I'm like, you guys will be talking about this for the rest of your lives.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny. I'm just going to put my phone on do not disturb here.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I've been doing a lot of taking a lot of your thoughts, Rob. I like your ideas on the reframing, and I've been playing with that a little bit, and really um, in my own situations. Hey, how can I continue to reframe something that is difficult, reframe something that is challenging, reframe something that I'm seeing at the moment as a negative, and just make sure, hey, it's for me, it's a positive, take it for what it's worth, and continue to move forward. And it's absolutely helping me. So thank you for sharing that.
oh, it's good. I'm pleased to hear it. The thing about reframing, I mean, we do that kind of work as part of the boot camp and then the Ascension experience. Not that it's called reframing as such, but I believe that it's a common strategy used by like psychologists, therapists, and so on to help people. I mean, and when you think about it, most opinions we have on most things are just choices that we make. Most things are not inherently what we think they are. And as Joshua says, that there's somebody that you might really dislike, but then other people who you like that person. And it's like, how does that work? Like, okay, so their opinion of that person is different to mine. So therefore there is no ultimate truth about whether they're a nice person or not really. But it's good to practice on the small stuff and then you get onto the bigger stuff.
That's even really powerful way you just said that. I hadn't really even thought about that at that level where, I don't like someone else likes someone. So the truth of if that person is a nice person or not a nice person,
Yeah.
I think there are a
Yeah.
few people that everybody agree on. Well, there are a few, right? But but it's amazing. I on a very, very high level, what I started to play with was realizing that, like at an event, like for example, I would go to either even a professional sporting event. There are 20,000 people in the stands. There are whatever, maybe 30 or 40 players down on the field, and every single person in that stand, every single person on the field, all is getting a different experience. even,
Yeah.
even if it's a proactive positive, right? They may be looking at their individual stats. The person in the stand, maybe one of their players isn't getting the reps that they thought they should get, right? So that one event, now it only happened once, and it only happened for a short period of time, but there were over 30,000 different experiences with that one event. And that
Yeah.
really sort of just like blew my mind a little bit. And when you just kind of equated that down to a person, it even expanded it even more in my mind.
That's interesting what you say about a sporting event. Joshua says that every person has a unique and different, so obviously different if you're unique, a unique view of the world, and the way I see things, even if you and I are looking at the same thing, with the way each of us sees it is completely different. And when I first said that, I thought, oh, really? And then I thought about it some more, and it is true actually that every human does have a unique experience and a unique perception. And although you and I might look at something and broadly agree on some of the parameters around it, our subjective experience and the way we feel and the way it makes us feel, blah, blah, it is different. And that's a good point you make about a sports event or a concert, whatever, when there's 30,000 people and they all having a different experience. It may be slightly different, but I realized from listening to the Joshua stuff that everybody is actually unique, in the history of time and the current moment as well, that everyone is actually completely different and unique. And we all think we see things and hear things the same, but we don't really. And I mean, even if I look with, my left eye or my right eye, like the colors, I'm just doing it now, looking out the window, the colors are slightly different between my two eyes, And so which is right, which one is true? And neither. And I don't think I've got any color blindness or anything, but there's a color of green that I think is gray. And Trace says, no, that's green. I said, on that website, that gray color, I don't like it. She said, that's not gray, that's green. But what about the sweater of mine here, this gray sweater? She said, there's a green sweater. It's like, what? So I have no idea what's going on there.
and it's so funny because I was just going to take it to that level of design, right? Because I'm doing some stuff with our website now for our company. And we had this creative agency give us all this great, design work. I mean, really strong, elegant. And there were 10 different opinions. It was one image, right? And you're like, and when you really start to think about it from a design, even like artwork, right? Why is some artwork worth 10 million? And you look at it and it's a dot on a piece of canvas.
Right.
Right. And it's so amazing when you start to think, although I think it's a common knowledge to us, I think anyway, that art is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you really take that concept, which has been around since the beginning of time, and you expand it out, the reality you're experiencing is in the eye of the beholder. And nothing is the same. Like even when you're watching the same game with your friend, your same sporting event with a friend, the conversation is, you're not finishing each other's sentences. You're giving each other back and forth. This player, that player, this situation, that situation, right? It's everything is always so different, and it's unbelievable to me. And I even though I think I knew it, I never connected it all to say that even though I'm living in my house with my wife and my two kids, and we're all going to do something together, every one of us has a different experience on that. Every one of us has a different take on that. And although you can't project in someone else's reality, you can absolutely influence that situation, right? A guy gets into a fight at a sporting event next to you, bumps into you, you start getting beaten up. You could be the happiest guy on the planet, right? That may just be a circumstance that, I guess, based upon Joshua's teaching, you brought that into your life, right? Or you brought that into your reality in some way. But maybe, maybe you don't. I don't know. I mean, is it if you're just the happiest guy that the fight falls in front of you and you don't get taken in? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, under the law of attraction, then you do attract that event and you're involved within it for some reason. So the law of attraction is not really about a random happenstance, really. Like there was this terrible thing happen. There's this guy I met here. He was the skipper of a boat, like a wildlife tour boat, and he was driving up country from here one day to go and see his mother. The guy would be in his 40s. He's a very popular guy. And this is a random thing. He got in an accident, it killed him. But what happened was there was a van, like a trades, like a glazier, basically. It was a guy, who does windows, driving his, I don't know, do you guys use the word van for like a small commercial vehicle?
We do use a van, yes.
Okay,
commercial
van.
So van. We actually say commercial van.
Yeah, commercial van coming with a trailer with glass on it. As the van came down the hill, the trailer detached and the trailer went straight into the guy and killed him. Now, the chances of that happening are minuscule, right? So, I mean, it's a tragic thing, but like, what are the odds of that happening? Like they're infinitesimal. It's just like, this is out in the countryside. There was nobody around apart from these two cars, and that it happened to be at that moment, and it happened to hit the van at, that angle, etc. So you kind of conclude that at some level, this guy had decided that it was his time to move on, because that's such an unlikely freak accident to happen. And
right. So you go into that sporting event, you're like, God, I hope these people aren't drinking too much. I hope don't get into a fight, right? And once again, it's an attraction universe, not a push away universe. You just start going down that sort of thought process, and you're already bringing those things to you, even though it's not part of your demeanor or your goal. But the fear of whatever, you just start to bring that towards you. That to me is that is a big concept, like that. So my daughter is traveling for the first time. My 17-year-old daughter is traveling for the first time. She's a high school grad going to college in an unchaperoned trip with 5 friends. And I found myself going into I wanted to like give her the life lesson. Boom, hammer, boom, the whole my 53 years. I wanted to give it to her in 12 minutes, right? And I'm still fearful. These are 5 girls that, how the young kids dress. It's tough, right? And I'm just trying to just be like, okay, honey, let her live her life, right? Not have her live up to my expectations, but let her live her life and be there to support her and help her and give her some guidance when she asks for it in certain ways. So I found myself really going down that, and I said, stop. Like, she's going to have a great time. And I finally sort of came to this, and I don't know if you've heard this term, but young kids are going on these Instagram trips.
Okay.
Have you heard this?
No.
There's a show called Fake Famous, and I think it's on like HBO right now. And you should watch it. It's super interesting. It talks about, because it taught me a lot about young kids and social media. And they're traveling. Now, when I was traveling and I was a young kid, we were going from bar to bar to bar. I mean, there was there was no phones. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car. I wasn't driving, right? I was just like, we go to New York City and I'll be back Friday. I'll be back Sunday. It's like, so in my mind, I'm going like, oh my God, she's this little kid. And, but I said, hey, listen, she's going to go and she's just going to go and take photos in front of all these really sort of quote unquote Instagram famous places and just have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, she's going to have fun. It's going to be a great trip. She's going to have so much fun. And I reframed it to that aspect. And I slept well last night. I mean, I didn't,
That's good.
I wasn't, I wasn't
That's
hammering her for like, where are you? What's going on? Where are you at? What do you, I didn't.
Yeah.
So it was, but I guess to use your analogy with this guy, maybe he was thinking, right? Oh my God, what happened if I got in an accident in this place? There would be no one could come and get me. You just start to go down that path, right? Mentally.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that if you listen to what Joshua says and you believe that, I mean, they make a statement which I guess some people would find hard to accept, which is that all death is suicide, meaning that at some higher level, you choose your moment of death, the time of your death. So at some point you have decided at some level, okay, I'm done here for this time and I'm out of here. And that can be pretty tough on loved ones who stay behind, especially if the person is younger. But I mean, in terms of science and in terms of what Joshua says, it would appear that time as we perceive it doesn't actually exist. And certainly in terms of what Joshua says, time as we perceive it doesn't exist at all. Like, I think everything is happening in the moment. But as many spiritual teachers have said, we don't have the perceptual apparatus to actually understand any of that. So we invent time. So the idea that somebody checked out at 40 rather than 90 or 100, obviously that's upsetting for the people left behind. And we think, well, they had another 50 years ahead of them, that they could have had a wonderful life. We also think, oh my God, I wouldn't want to die. Imagine if that was me. So a lot of it's kind of triggering our own fears. And a lot of the rest of it is, if it's somebody you care about, is you're not grieving really for them not having their other 50 years. Most of it is, I really miss that person, and it's our personal pain really that is the issue with it. So it's not we kind of think that we're sad for that person, but most of it really, I think, is about how we feel.
You know, it's so it's interesting you say that, you know, that Joshua says everyone that dies of suicide. And I think what happens in to a lot of people following teachings or going down a path is they go, it's like, you know, it's like I want to swim. If I'm learning to swim, it's great to get, you know, test water in a bathtub. Then maybe I'm going to go into the jacuzzi. Then I'm going to go into a small, you know, child's pool. Then maybe I go in the deep end. Then maybe I go to the ocean. Then maybe get dropped out of a helicopter in the middle of anywhere. I got to swim 100 miles, right? But that whole death is everybody is all death is suicide. Is going from I want to learn how to swim. I'm going to go in the bathtub to I'm going to get dropped 100 miles offshore and I got to swim. It's such a big concept. And then people go,
Yeah.
oh, I can't do that. That's just wrong. And they walk away from it. Right. Well, I'm like, well, wait a minute. You got to build up to it.
Yeah.
Right. You have
Yeah.
to start to learn. And I don't know if I understand that concept fully. I certainly appreciate the concept, but it may be too big for me at this point in time. I don't know if my expansion has gotten me there. Well, where I could fully appreciate that for any situation. I certainly can
Yeah.
absolutely in my mind understand it, but I kind of feel like I'm not ready to get dropped off 100 miles offshore yet.
Yeah. I think a lot of people like that in theory, we might understand what Joshua says about death, that the person's not really gone there as much here as they ever were. And you can, in your mind, communicate with them or be with them or feel their presence or whatever. All of that's fine in theory, I think, until you lose somebody you really care about. And then I think the theory may be a little bit harder. Well, I know it is, because Trace, my partner, last year, both her sister, who was my age, and her brother, who was the baby of the family, they both died. And the sister had cancer and died over a period of several months. And so to some extent, everyone had time to get used to that. And she wasn't really a joy of life person. So, you know, you can understand at some higher level that maybe she decided it was time, but obviously it was still incredibly hard. But then the brother, he was full of the joy of life, and we had a lot of fun with him. And he was, you know, only a year or two older than you. And he seemed to have so much to live for, and they were particularly close. So, you know, with losing two siblings, especially him, not that she loved one more or less than the other, but she felt the pain of his loss, his departure far more. And even though we both kind of can feel his presence, she's really struggling with that idea, you know. Like in theory, yeah, okay, I can understand that he's still here and that you don't really lose anybody. And Joshua says, you know, you no longer cry at funerals, blah, blah. But as you say, it's like some of these ideas are big. And I think I said to you the other day that you watch a child learning to walk and your next thought is not marathon training. Now, when that child's 20, they may be a marathon runner, right? Or 30 or whatever. But you know, when they're just learning to walk and taking their first steps, you can see it's a long, long, long progression before they can even run properly, you know, let alone run for a sustained distance. So, and it's the same I find with this work. Like, you know, when we have the idea to stay in alignment, you have to accept everything is okay, that there is no wrong in the universe. It's only our thought that makes it so. So as a theory, or as a, you know, theoretical construct, okay, I get that. I can see that most things are opinions. Some things are harder and some things are easier. But I think we've talked about this before, that, okay, start with something easy, then move up to something a little bit harder. And I think I said to you the other day, I think for a lot of people, a good practice point is politicians. Because in reality, they make very little difference to most of our lives, although we might get worked up about it. But, and even if they do, I mean, sometimes a divisive politician leads to a lot of change in society, you know, a lot of beneficial change. So, you know, it's a good exercise that a lot of people kind of stumble on, I find, in this kind of work, even something abstract like my thoughts about that politician. And if it's a politician you really can't stand, we'll start with somebody that you dislike somewhat and move up to the really challenging one. So in other words, to me, it's like, okay, I'm gonna run a marathon. So I'm really unfit, let's say, and the first thing I'm gonna do is gonna run 100, you know, like 100 feet or 300 feet or whatever, you know. I'm gonna run from that, you know, lamppost or power pole or whatever you guys call them. So that one, I listened to a radio show about that. This woman did that. She years ago about starting running, never run before, and she just ran that short distance. That was her first thing, and but later on she ran two, and then eventually she runs a marathon. But she didn't try and run 20 miles day one.
So then you look at, and that's great, and you look at for like COVID, right, for this worldwide experience. So it's obviously people have had horrible, and you feel for all this stuff, but there are people that have had zero bad experience with COVID. There are people that have had life-changing and even death, right? Obviously, significant amount of it. So here's one event, right, that has occurred for the entire world, and there are hundreds of millions, if not billions, of different experiences and thoughts on this one event. I talk to people and I get a different. We all do, right? It's part of our, no matter what we do, it's part of our conversation almost every day, right? If you're not hoping people are feeling better, you're helping or doing whatever you can, right? But there are very common, basic stuff, but overall the experience that I'm seeing and hearing from people, there are no two the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's created a lot of issues and a lot of thoughts for people, like, should I wear a mask and should I get vaccinated? Am I in fear? And I mean, there was a woman in one of the podcasts asked Joshua about wearing a mask on a plane, and because on a plane you have to wear a mask, and they were traveling quite a few hours and didn't want to. And then Joshua said, you wear underwear, don't you? And she's like, yeah. And you don't really like it, do you? Not really, but you do it because you live in society, right? Yeah. So you don't give it another thought, do you? No. Okay. So just put on the mask, because that's how it is. If you live in society, you want to get on an airplane, you put on a mask, end of story. And the same for me I couldn't really care. I wear a mask when we fly. That's about the only time you have to wear a mask in New Zealand is public transport in one big city where most of the people flying in, and also on a plane. But we travel a lot. We lived until COVID, we were basically digital nomads, and we lived in India and in France as well. And we may do some more of that, but the fact is you won't be able to do that without a vaccine passport. So I don't even think about it. It's like, yeah, I'm going to get vaccinated as soon as. New Zealand's very slow because we don't have any manufacturing and we're tiny. So we got no muscle power to grab any vaccines on the world stage. So it's still going to be a few months out for me, I think. But anyway, we won't be able to travel until we've been vaccinated. So I don't give it another thought, right? It's like, if I want to travel, I'll get a vaccine, end of story. I couldn't care. So, but other people, I know that you're not necessarily going to get vaccinated. I think we both had COVID, so we probably would have antibodies if there was a good antibody test available here. And Trace got quite sick when we flew in.
I think what we're struggling with as a society is that these politicians are trying to narrow it down to one thing. But we're all trying to, whatever that one thing may be, you're a good person, whatever, right? But it hasn't been one experience it's been a billion experiences, and we can't, but everyone's trying to narrow it down, right? My parents are, and they have taken this to the utmost extreme, right? Beyond. You cannot have a conversation with them. They talk about it all day long. They're on the news all day long. They're looking up at all. It is their number one and their only conversation, their only topic. Right. And this is their experience. This is here, and it feeds there. To your point, I have not given it here in Arizona. I haven't given a second thought. I do whatever I'm told, right? If you got to wear a mask someplace, of course I wear it. I want to keep people safe. I follow the rules. There, to your point, it's all open up. There are no more rules here. You can do whatever you want. But they literally will not go out of the house without a mask, which is fine, right? It's their choice. But their experience, their fear of being sick, their fear of getting older, their fear of all that, this has manifested for them in the most significant way it possibly could. For me, I traveled all last year, right? I did everything, besides the whole, whatever it was, the 8 weeks that America was shut down. Nothing's changed for me. I work from home now versus work from an office, right? But that's still great. So much more is actually, so many more opportunities have come from that, right? But my experience with this pandemic is so it's tough to have a conversation with somebody who's had a terrible experience with it, because now I sound insensitive. I don't mean to be insensitive. I want to be healthy and I want to be, empathetic, right, to everybody. If you're in trouble, I want to help you. But during this pandemic, I've had some significant benefits. And if I try to talk to people about it, it is they are making you feel their reality of what happened. And now you get people fighting. I mean, I've seen people fighting in the grocery store, over a mask. And one guy was like 450 pounds, and he's getting like, a case of regular Coca-Cola and 12 bags of Doritos. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, can we help your diet first? Can we put some things in here that are, and it, because, and I appreciate everybody, but the fact that we try to push, and I think the news media does this a lot, try to push one narrative on everybody. Right. And it goes that in life. If you're having a bad day and you try to push that on somebody else, right, or whatever it is. But if you take a moment and you realize that you're having a great day and this is all for my benefit, and this is and you don't go down that rabbit hole. My parents have not left a TV since March of 2000. 10 hours a day.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. 10 hours, MSNBC. And they are literally, the first time they're going on a plane, they're going to see my sister, they're going to Atlanta, they're masked up, which we all have to be, in wheelchairs. They were fully active before this happened. Diapers, wheelchairs, getting in the airport. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
In 1 year, they went from walking 3 and 4 miles a day, to driving down to Florida, which is like a 24-hour trip themselves, to in wheelchairs, masked up, both wearing diapers.
Wow.
And trying to get to my sister's from New York to Atlanta. 1 year. But that, as I look at it, that was the reality they wanted. They wanted this, right? I mean, how else can you look at it? Like, now for me, I got a better job. I'm talking to you. I found Joshua. I'm like, my kids, I had more time with my kids. And God, thank you that nobody close to me has had a significant issue, right? But this has been great. And I don't mean to say that that all the bad is, but for my reality has been really powerful. I'm like, okay, right? Is that strange? Or, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot.
No, I mean, as you say, you don't necessarily want to say that to some people because it may be too much for them to handle. But I mean, COVID changed things for us because we had to leave. We decided to leave India in a hurry, which was a very good idea. And we pretty much got the last plane out of Mumbai.
Wow.
And, we went through Singapore airport. We flew Singapore Airlines. Our first flight was cancelled, so we had to, lost that airfare and different airline. Got on the Singapore flight. Changi Airport in Singapore is incredibly busy. I don't know if you've ever been through there, but it's just like seething with people. And I got this photo at Changi Airport, and there's not this massive long area, this room that goes forever, like, miles long, and not a person to be seen, which is just like, I couldn't imagine that in Singapore Airport. Anyway, so we left Mumbai, we left our stuff in Mumbai. We got our winter clothes are still in an apartment in Paris. So, we got stuff that we want to go back and get. But, and life changed. Like,
right now. You're freezing right now, right? You're freezing right now. You don't have your winter stuff.
Yeah, I had to buy new winter clothes. And Trace's brother, who passed away, he lived in France, and we couldn't actually go there, to his funeral or anything, which was, that was tough. But we still want to go back and, see his partner and our friends over there, blah, blah. Anyway, so it has changed our life a lot because we haven't been able to travel and these things happened. But, the alternative life that sprang up because of that is awesome as well. Like, it's wonderful. And so I don't have any regrets about having to fly back to New Zealand and having to stay here, etc. Like, that's fine. This is really good. I'm really enjoying it. We're making the most of it. It also, from our point of view, I've been trying to do more and more Zoom meetings with clients, even in New Zealand. And so COVID has normalized Zoom. So pretty much everybody's like, yeah, sure, no problem.
You're right. Video communication. And I did it very sparingly before, but I'm on 10 of these a day, to your point.
Right.
And it's fantastic. I mean, yesterday was the first time I actually went and drove to meet a client. that I had to go. I said, I'll come out, and didn't do a Zoom call. And I said, I want something different. I need to be outside, right? I want to get out and experience the 115 degrees.
Yeah, yeah,
But you're right. So, and so when you talk about your reality and how you create, being a deliberate creator in your reality, and what that actually means, and I was trying to tell my daughter, who was going through a tough time, my younger daughter, with something, and I was trying to tell her, without telling her that you've brought this on yourself. You're responsible for this, right? Which is just adding to the pressure she's already feeling terrible about, right? Is that, when something bad happens, none of us want to take responsibility for it. Like, I didn't do that. I didn't want that in my life. I didn't ask for that. Well, we did, right? We know we did. We just don't know. Sometimes we don't know how we did it.
yeah, yeah. That was the big thing, really. One of the big takeaways for me, whether it was the end of the last boot camp or whether it was the last 4 weeks we did with alignment and the ascension experience, was I finally worked out after 2 years, how was it that I was creating some things in my life that I really wanted, and then I would create a whole bunch of other stuff that I really did not want, some unpleasant experiences. And long before I knew about this work, I knew that I was doing it, but I had no idea, which is why I talk about, the helicopter analogy, because it's not an intuitive or obvious thing. But I finally worked out, listening to doing the Joshua work, that, okay, it's because I slip into alignment and I slip out of alignment. And when you slip out of alignment, you end up in a current of fear, and you attract negative thoughts, and you can spiral down with that as well and attract increasingly powerful negative thoughts. We have a friend who is kind of the best example I can think of somebody who really attracts many things into her life that she does not want. Like, she's a very powerful creator, but she thinks this is happening to her. I guess she's in the victim mentality, but she's kind of like for us, she's like an LOA, law of attraction example. It's almost like she's a teacher. Like, look how powerful this is. If only she could actually do a 180 and realize that she's attracting stuff she doesn't want, who could swap around and get what she does want. So that was a big learning for me, to realize that slipping in and out of alignment was why I'm attracting stuff I don't want as well as stuff I do want. And it does take practice, doesn't it, to stay in alignment, which is about not judging anything as wrong. That there is no wrong in the universe. The universe just is. It's the judgment we put on it, the thought we put around it.
That's huge. And I'm still not, I understand the concept. I don't, I could go a whole day in a funk and then realize at the end of the day, oh, I need to reframe that, right? It doesn't always appear to me as second nature to. And I think even Joshua says, if you see it as wrong, even for a split second, you're out of alignment. Right. So that to me is like a little bit of a, that's the struggle I'm embracing right now, is that,
yeah,
because my first thought is like, well, that's stupid. That's wrong.
So that's just a momentary wobble in your vibration, right? And right. You catch yourself very quickly and you readjust and realign.
Yes.
But it's when you actually go down that path and then 5-10 minutes later, you think, oh, you know what? Actually, I just really let myself be absorbed by that,
Yeah.
You read something in the news and it triggers you, like, oh, that stupid person, how dare they do that? Like some people, we have this managed isolation quarantine system. So when you fly into New Zealand, you have to be in a special quarantine hotel, and you've got to be there 2 weeks and have a number of negative tests, and then you go. And there are very strict rules about fraternizing with other people in that facility. And there was this family who flew in, cousins and everything else, and they let their kids go up and run around up and down the corridors. And I think the kids are symptomatic. And then one of them went to another room to talk to their cousin, all of which is strictly against the rules. So this is, family, blah, 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 and managed isolation quarantine, do this. And of course, the headline is big and it's at the top of the news, and it's to trigger everyone's outrage. Like, how dare they do that to us? And, sure, that's irresponsible and there'll be some consequences, and they may have to reset their 14 days, which would annoy them, I'm sure. But from my point of view, this is just a story I read in the news, and it's if it if it caused, infection in the community and there was another massive lockdown, that might affect me. But where I live, it probably wouldn't anyway. So one point of view is like, okay, I can see that was, not necessarily that friendly to society as such, but makes no difference to me. Doesn't affect me at all. And if I get wound up by a story like that, then that's purely my choice. So it's quite easy to objectify that situation and see if there's something does affect you, that, that's a little bit harder and takes a bit more practice.
Yes, I do. I agree. I have become a lot more accepting of what's going on. Like there's situations, even when there are situations when I find my kids are getting bullied on social media, when before I would get very defensive and when want to, reach out to that parent and have a conversation with somebody. Now I'm like, well, like, okay, like, are you okay with this? And I'm like, how do you, and I'm like, I no longer have a feeling, or even if I get some social media, someone says something on social media, I'm like, whatever. Like I kind of look at it as they're trying to project in my reality. And I'm like, I'm not letting it happen. Like, I'm not, like, you go do what you go be you. Like, good luck. I'm here for you. Like, whatever, go take that fight someplace else. Right. And that has been a huge revelation that's actually helped me tremendously. Like, I'm no longer reacting. And I think in my past, that's what I was given. I had manifestation event after manifestation event because I believed that, I wasn't worthy, and, I needed outside conditions to validate, either my intelligence or my success. Right. And I just kept getting over and over. And I'm like, why am I bringing all this to me? And in the end, it really wasn't about me trying to bring negativity. It was about me trying to identify my issue with worthiness, my issue with significance, and then my issue with validation, right? Like, none of which, I needed, but the only way that the universe could tell me that these are things I needed to address was to put emotional triggers in front of me, right? Like, I didn't ask for my company to go through bankruptcy. I didn't ask for, well, you did. You just didn't ask for that specific, I didn't ask for that specific moment or that specific condition. Like, no, of course not. The universe is not going to give you, it's going to give you a way to understand what you're supposed to. However, whatever that event is, it's up to the universe. And who knows, right? But we say, I didn't ask for that one event.
Yeah, I mean, what happened there, and I had a similar experience, and I think Gary did too, is that the universe is saying to you, your worth is not your net worth. It's not your status. It's not the things you have and the things you do. Your worth is something else. And the universe gives you the message. It's like, I'm deaf to that. I'm not hearing it. Like, la, la, la. And so universe says, okay, if you didn't hear it this time, how about this? And the universe sucks you an even bigger one. It's like, no, I'm going to keep on. I can fix this and, do more of the same. And this is actually reality. This is how it all works. And then the universe keeps giving you another one and another one to eventually, if we're crazy enough, then, you're just about to pass out on the canvas and you finally tap out, okay, you win. I see it now. And Joshua talks about the same thing with illness as well, that if you resist something, you may get some physical discomfort. And if you resist and resist and resist, eventually that may manifest in the body as a physical illness. So that's an interesting one as well.
Well, I actually, and I wholeheartedly believe that. So in my 20s, I was working in advertising. I think I told you this, in New York City. I mean, this was Mad Men, martini lunches. Where there weren't computers, there weren't cell phones when I started in the late 80s, early 90s working in advertising. The Macintosh was a typewriter. It wasn't a computer. There was no internet, right? Well, there was obviously, but it wasn't prevalent then. But I was making, and I started, making no money, but you get to a point where you get your accounts, I was making a lot of money, and but it wasn't. It just didn't feel right. Like, the people, it was a disconnect on morality. There was a disconnect on, but I sort of gave everything a pass for money. Right. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, even though these 5 things are associated with are wrong, like, I didn't personally do that. Right. I didn't make that decision. The CEO made that decision, and I'm just abiding by that. Right. It was always an excuse. But I started to feel physically ill walking into office for about a year. I would literally almost like like throw up walking by this. My office is right next to the CEOs, and
Wow.
I just didn't feel. I'm like, what is wrong? And I ended up going to the doctor, going, I know. And she's like, wow. And I'm an in shape guy. I like, you have diabetes. I'm like, I have
Wow.
diabetes. Like, I'm a, in shape, don't have I'm not overweight in any way whatsoever. I didn't eat crazy amounts of sugar. I'm not a cake guy or a sugar guy. But I literally remember that year, and I remember the feeling of, because it was wrong and I knew it. And I just kept fighting and staying there because I was making so much money. I'm like, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to fight this out. I'm going to put it out, because I'm making so much money. It's so great. And then, the almost throwing up every day wasn't enough. That finally the universe goes, bam. How's that?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I think I had this conversation with Josh. I remember the feeling, and I remember going, oh my God, I got cancer because I'm doing this. And I didn't have diabetes. And I look at diabetes, to be honest, as the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Like, I eat healthy. I don't ever touch sugar, very rarely touch carbs. I eat healthy. I try to do the right thing, but I can tell you that, and I don't drink incessively, right? All these things you can't do, right? You
Yep.
can't go.
Yep.
I'm like, but I am a all in kind of guy. Like, I am all in when we do stuff. So I have a tendency to go over the top passionately, and diabetes for me controls me not going over the top food wise. So I'm not 450 pounds. It controls me alcohol wise. I don't overdrink. I don't do anything. Right. I'm like, it's been the greatest factor of my life in the
Wow.
last, 25 years. I tell everyone, it saved my life. There's no question. I was living in New York City, this, as a single guy, running around making boatloads of money. I literally was putting myself into the ground, and I didn't even know it. Right. It was just one big constant
Yeah.
party.
Yeah.
Uh, and the minute I got it, everything changed.
Wow.
That day. I mean, I got married 1 year later. I mean, everything changed. And I always say it was like so people say, if I was to say to somebody who was like my parents, and we talk about diabetes, oh, you got to watch out. You could people lose limbs.
Yeah.
People lose their eyesight. And I'm like, I have no, my levels are all the same as somebody who doesn't have it. Although I take shots every day, right? All that stuff.
Your
But
HbA1c.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I talk to them about it. It's the most, and I'm like, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say.
So you must be type 1, right?
Well, it started as type 2, so it's a progressive, right, disease.
Right.
You don't solve it. Now I'm type 1, where I got to the point I
Right.
started just taking pills,
Yep.
right, and doing that kind of stuff, and now I just take the shots. But I literally look at, and I don't eat. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat anything with sugar in it. Like,
Yeah.
nothing. Never
Yeah.
touched it.
The
Don't
reason I
care.
ask is because there's, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but one of our businesses that we're partners in with an old friend of mine, this guy founded this business called Eat for Keeps. He founded that
Yeah, I
business
remember.
like
I was
20
going to
years
ask you
ago.
about that.
Yeah, yeah. Lee Elders, and he's written a couple of books, and we got into the business to take it online to work with Lee. So I've learned a lot about what to eat and what not to eat for diabetics, especially for pre-diabetics and type 2, or for people who are struggling with weight loss. And one of the interesting things about Lee, he's a very positive guy. He's 77, and New Zealand recently opened the border with Australia. And in the past, you basically couldn't come into New Zealand unless you had a passport sort of thing. But Australians can now come to New Zealand. Like, there'll probably be thousands come for our ski season, which will start any day now. But Lee at 77 is like, I like going to tropical Queensland in the middle of winter, and Lee and Kate, they're off. He's like, I have no fear. He didn't say that, but I can see. He's like, I have no fear. We always go into Queensland. We're going to go there for a month or 2 months, whatever they do, walk on the beach in the sunshine instead of the New Zealand winter. And it's interesting that he's completely fearless about the whole COVID thing at 77.
It's super interesting, all this stuff. Like, I will tell you, I walk into my endocrinologist's office and there are 30 people in the waiting room. They're all overweight. They all have issues. There are significant issues right across the board. And I'm the only guy in there that's not overweight, that doesn't have any issues. I walk in all the time, and it's really just very simple. Hey, just do the blood work, check the stuff, and re-up whenever we need to. whatever medication, right? And I follow the directions. I don't think I manifested the need for it, but I will tell you that if you go healthy, veggie, keto style, no carb, no sugar, carbs through vegetables, it's like your life is changing across the board. And my doctor will tell me, well, you can have a fistful of carbs. You can, and I'm like, no, you can't. If you're a diabetic, you do not process carbs. You do not process sugars. And I keep telling her, I'm like, I do this like a very heavy fish and vegetable keto. And she's like, and I intermittent fast. I only eat between like 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. You can't do any of those things. I'm like, well, that's what you should be telling every single patient. And I said, you just told me I have the numbers of somebody who doesn't have diabetes. Why would you tell me I couldn't do something? Because it's not what people do. It's not what they say they're going to do. And I'm like, it's not what the medical journals. I'm like, I don't care what the medical journals say. Like,
there's a lot of misinformation around this. Like I saw an article in the news yesterday. There's some kind of in New Zealand, some kind of school lunch program, and there's a lot of maybe in the poorer areas, and there's a lot of obesity, especially in the poorer areas. And
everywhere, poor areas.
And they
right?
said butter chicken is not okay. They trim the fat off all the meat, and like, and then sushi's okay. Like people think sushi's healthy, but I mean that white rice just turns to sugar instantly, to glucose, and that's one of the reasons why people put on weight, as you would know, is that stuff like white rice or pasta or white bread or whatever. That
can't do any of it.
Yeah, that's right. It turns to sugar instantly in the body, and you've got all the sugar in the body's like, well, we're not out there exercising right now. We don't need all that sugar right now. We just got a whole big delivery of it. What are we going to do? Okay, we're going to store it as body fat.
It's crazy. And the medical community isn't explaining to people. Like I was even talking to my parents, and I'm like, so for your body to heal, right? All the energy in your body, it takes 12 hours to digest a meal. You have a sandwich. Tonight we have sandwiches, all right? Italian. It takes 12 hours to digest that sandwich. All your energy, everything is going to digest that food. So if you're eating every 4 or 5 hours, right? And then we tell athletes that, and I get that. But you talk about a normal, huge society. All our bodies, all the energy in our bodies, all it's doing is digesting food 24/7. That's all it's doing. Like, it's not healing. It's not growing. It's not getting better. There are days I'll take a week and I'll fast, or I'll only eat once a day. So I'll fast for 23 hours, right? I'll eat for 1 hour.
Yep.
I may eat all 3 meals in that 1 hour, depending how hungry I am, right? But I never feel better. I mean, I have never felt better that week. Even when I fast for 3 days, or I do a 5-day fast, I have more energy on day 3 and 4 and 5 than I've ever had in my entire life.
Wow.
And if you look back to society, thousands of years ago, fasting was an important part of all of our lives back then. People fasted. We don't it's like running a marathon, right? So for me, I look at sprinting. I tell people it's like sprinting it. What is the importance of intermittent fasting and meditation? Meditation is your mind is sprinting all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And if you want to give yourself, and when you sprint 100 yards, you have to stop and put your hands on your knees and take a deep breath, right? To be able to go again. So if you want to do that with meditation, meditation is letting your mind breathe for a moment. Same with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is letting your body heal. So when you don't eat between 12 hours, if you fast for 18 or 20 hours, all that energy in my body from hour 12 to hour 23, right? That's 9 hours, or those 11 hours are absolutely, I am healing. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting better. And that's why I thought when I had COVID, to your point, I had chicken broth once a day. That's all I ate. And in 3 days, it was all done. Okay. From the symptoms, right? I didn't have, any of that. And I know everybody's different, but for me, like, you need to give your body a moment to breathe and to function in itself. Like, doctors don't create us. You weren't created by a doctor. the universe created all of us. Our bodies can function on their own if we let it. Right. And I still take my medication for diabetes. I'm not, I'm in my right. So I don't need it, but I just follow the rules. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I have diabetes and I'm not supposed to eat sugar and I'm not supposed to drink and I'm not supposed to do these things, well, let me try that and see how my life gets better. And I'm like, oh my God, my life's better.
Yeah. I mean, with type 1, you don't have any choice but to take medication, obviously, because the pancreas isn't doing what it used to do. I was talking to a client the other day who's 50 and he's type 1. And he mentioned that in recent times his HbA1c has been creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And I asked him what he eats. And I thought, okay, well, there's your problem. That it's incredible to me. And I look at diabetes forums on Reddit, for example. It's incredible how little is known about what you can and you can't eat. With Eat for Keeps, it's aimed at pre-diabetics and type 2s. And some people, it works to go grain-free, for example. But with Eat for Keeps, it's based on an idea of 30% of your calories from protein, 30 from fat, and 40 from carbs, but they need to be low GI, low GL carbs, so complex carbs. And that works very well. We've had a lot of, over many years, patients referred by doctors, and there's been, great success. Some people have reduced or got off their medication as type 2s or pre-diabetics. So I understand what you're saying about carbs. And that is really where most people trip up, is in the carbs.
Yeah. And I mean, so I make veggie burgers, right? My kids love them, but it's literally like 12 vegetables. That's all. I mean, all I use is 12 vegetables, 2 eggs, a little bit of Parmesan cheese, a little bit of shredded cheese. And everything is literally fresh from there. But if you put it into like a calculator, right? A carb calculator, there's each veggie burger's got like 18 grams of carbs, but it's vegetable carbs. And I will tell you, I could eat that and then check my sugars, and I may get a small, but even though I'm a type 1, where I don't really have it, and nothing's going on, right? I'm not producing any insulin on my own.
Yeah.
It manages it. Now, if I was to go have a piece of bread with 18 carbs, one piece of white bread, right? That would go through the roof, and I wouldn't be, and I try to tell it to people. I'm like, but they don't get it. Well, my doctor says, and I'm like, well, what is your body?
Well, white bread, potatoes, pasta, that stuff. Really, most people, pretty much nobody should eat that stuff, really, because it does turn to sugar instantly. And for most people, we don't need that sugar, so we put it on as weight. In the indigenous language of New Zealand, the Maori language, their word for diabetes is mate hoka. Mate is death, and hoka is sugar. So the sugar death.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it really, and that's exactly what it is. So I can only say that and once again, this goes to like the pandemic, right? In my reality, diabetes has been a life game changer for me, right? And I don't tell people, and I don't ever ask people to customize the food. If I go to a restaurant, I do something. I go out there, and like I said, if I don't eat, I don't eat. Like I'm like, okay.
But it's pretty easy in a restaurant to get it right, though, isn't it? Like there are many things you can eat, and like we went to an Indian restaurant for lunch the other day when we were out shopping, and when we went to the big smoke, because we live rurally, and I saw this Indian restaurant, and we like Indian food, obviously, since we lived in India, and they served up basmati rice, which is the best of the white rices. And we had a little bit, like we didn't eat all of the rice, we never do, but it's nice to eat. We can eat it. We're not diabetic, but we had we had kebab type entrees, and then we had dal makhni, which is literally means butter dal. So it's got butter and cream in it, and it's with the black gram dal. It's a delicious, awesome Indian dish. So essentially we had some meat, we had some, dal, some lentils, a little bit of basmati rice, not a lot, but we didn't ask for anything different than what was on the menu. Oh, we had this came with some naan, so we had a tiny amount of naan each, which is white bread, but it was just a very small amount. So what I'm saying is it's very easy to go to a restaurant and not have a sugar spiking meal.
Oh, I mean, for me, you just, easy on the sauces, sauce on the side, because you don't know what they make sauce as. And in any meal, it could be chicken, it could be a hamburger, it could be fish, right? I mean, I can pretty much get whatever I want. Even in an Italian restaurant, I go and get sausages, right? Sausage and peppers. You can go
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah. Big plate
To
of
your point.
pasta is not so good, and fettuccine is slightly better because it's made with egg, but it's still going to be sugar
Oh,
spiking essentially.
it's. I have people tell me all the time, like, "Oh, my doctor said I could have." I'm like, Your doctor should be institutionalized. You can't."
I can't believe the medical advice that happens. It's shocking. And the
And then the
example of
people
the
buy
health
into it.
guidelines recommending sushi, for obese
Oh
children, it's like, get out of here.
no,
Like
you're.
all that white rice, you're kidding me.
It's crazy, right? And then
Yeah, yeah,
and it's almost like it's almost, which is super strange to me. I am going to believe what this person says because they have a piece of paper that gives them some sort of certificate. And I always say, well, how do you feel on that? I don't really feel good. But the doctor says, okay. I'm like, well, if you don't feel good, then don't do it. Right? How funny is it? But we override that. Well, the doctor said I could, and it's what everyone else is doing. I'm like, it doesn't feel good. Why would you do it? It's crazy. And for all of these things, and that's where, and I didn't even realize it until going through all, I think, Joshua's teachings, that and I always looked at it like I'm just going to get into an argument with somebody because I have a different view on this. And I just realized, I'm like, I don't have a different view. I just have a different reality. Like, this
yeah,
was given to me different. It was given to me for a different reason than it was given to you.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And that to me, like blew my mind. I'm like, whoa. So I got diabetes for my reasons. Somebody else got diabetes for different reasons. And
Mm.
someone else got something for different, right? And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. And I can't project. I can't tell people you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Because they don't have it for the same reason I do.
Yeah.
I can't really help people. If they
I
ask me,
know
I can tell them what I'm doing.
I know a couple of people, one of whom is a surgeon. He's a very, very clever man. I know a couple of people who are pre-diabetic, and they're both happy to take the medication and continue to eat carbs, which astounds me. Like,
It's
hold on, there's a better way. You don't have to go down that path. But I think what we discovered with Eat for Keeps, and what Lee always says, is that people will make the changes when they're ready. And when they're ready often means they've had a big scare. And I think eventually the threat of the things you mentioned, which if you don't control your diabetes, you can lose your eyesight, lose your toes, and gangrene and dialysis and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it is particularly nasty if you get it out of control. So it's when people either are taking so many pills that their table at home is covered in bottles, or they have a big scare, then or some people, the diagnosis is enough to actually get them to the point of ready. Because I noticed with Eat for Keeps that if we marketed it to people as how to lose weight permanently without dieting and fasting and all the rest of it, you can if you want, but you don't need to. The weight loss thing wasn't really the motivation. The people who had a diabetic diagnosis, those were the people who were ready, because they were scared. They were starting to really worry, and so those people were totally ready. Anyway, enough on diabetes and food. I just want to mention something that happened a number of years ago. It was probably about 5 years ago, when I was a particularly low ebb in my life. A lot of bad things had happened, and I decided that I would somehow turn it around. And I knew that the answer lay within, so to speak. and um, and I had a feeling that I'd created this mess, if I want to call it that. And I didn't know how I'd created it, but I did realize that I had. And I had this notion I had no idea where it came from, that I guess the voice in my head said, it's about your vibration. You have to raise your vibration. Now, I didn't even know what vibration was at that point. And then a lot of information since this time has come to me electronically. And what I mean by that is, I woke up one morning, I picked up my iPhone, I looked at Kindle, and there was a book by Wayne Dyer open in my Kindle. Now, I did have the book in Kindle, but I had not looked at that book for several years, right? And this Wayne Dyer book was open, and it was open at a particular page, and the sentence I looked at was exactly what I needed to start my big turnaround in my life. So I made the decision the day before that I really need to change things. I opened up my Kindle, and there is the message to get me on track. And since then, many coincidental signals and help and inspirations and all sorts of things come to me electronically. I guess because I'm in a digital business, I'm constantly on my computer or on my phone looking at stuff. But it's amazing now. Now I think when something comes up unexpectedly, I now look at it and think about it. Okay, is this relevant for what what's the value in this for me? Like, and it's stuff to do with work as well. It's not just personal growth or spiritual type stuff, but it seems to be the mode that really, really works for me. And it's interesting how that all started, which and frequently stuff pops up on my phone. It's like, where did that come from? Or I get an email about something. It's like, oh, I was just thinking about how do I do such and such, and lo and behold, here's somebody doing a webinar on their very topic. Same thing happens with questions in the Joshua Live, that I seldom ask a question because I pose a question and I think about it and I think, yeah, that's the question I want to ask. I get onto the Joshua Live or open up the work for the day and it's like, oh, there is my answer. So pretty much all of my questions that I pose are self-answering.
Yeah, that happens a lot too. I get it with numbers. So I
Right.
love numbers. I've always loved numbers. And I don't know, maybe about maybe before, let's see, maybe 2 years ago, just commuting in, I started noticing license plates, 11111. I'm like, whoa, okay. Another license plate, 111. I'm like, okay, what are the chances of that, happening? And then same with 333 767.
I get a
And
lot
so
of
for
that.
me,
I got this little clock thing on my desk, and it's set to centigrade, not Fahrenheit. It's a bit cold in here at the moment. But frequently I'll pick it up and it will be something like it's 222 and the temperature is 22.2. So it's like 2222222. It's like, what are the odds of looking at that thing and that's happening? It's like it happens a
right?
lot. Yeah. So when they first started talking about that in the Joshua community, I thought, what are they talking about? But I understand that it's kind of your inner self signifying to you that you're in alignment and reminding you. It seems to be an alignment indicator.
Well, that's really good. I'm gonna write that down. It's an alignment indicator, and I feel like when I'm thinking, when my mind is aware, I see a lot more of those coincidences. There's no question.
Yeah.
Numbers always seem to be, could be addresses I'm pulling up to, could be exit signs, could be whatever. I was on the road. They're everywhere. I mean, if you meet somebody, all of a sudden they're, something they have, and you're like, holy cow. But it's I always like the numbers, and I do get, I do like the quotes and the communication, and when you get from social media. So I think, to your point, the universe is always trying to speak to us and give us thoughts to match our vibration or to help our vibration, right?
Yeah. And it's being open to them. And I guess that's one of the things I now recognize, that when random stuff pops up electronically, I don't just swipe it away. I look at it and think, okay, that's come out of nowhere. What is this? And how is this for me? So part of it's just actually allowing it to recognize it without swiping it away. So we're about to start. I'm just going to look for this email if I can find it on my phone. We're about to start the Ascension Experience Financial Prosperity. That's the name of that.
Yeah, I'm excited by this. I'm excited for this one.
Financial Prosperity. So it says about this group, this is the second course in the Ascension Experience. We will continue to alter our beliefs and rise to new vibrational heights, which will create a belief system that will allow for more financial prosperity. So I know a lot of people are drawn to this kind of work because they want financial prosperity. It's the single most popular driver for people getting into this kind of work, although they then discover that what is it that you truly want, and that your current circumstances are a reflection of your vibration and where you're at. So it's going to be very interesting 4 weeks just on that, because with the alignment section, the 4 weeks of that, like we've done a lot of work on alignment in the boot camp, but that was a whole new level in the alignment, the 4 weeks on alignment, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think somebody said the other day, or he had said that, this is the only group going through this. And I don't know what that really meant worldwide, globally, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in New Zealand, in Arizona. But that comment or that statement of this is the only group going to this level, right? I have a tough time with that. I'm like, whoa, am I chosen for something? Am I on a
Yeah.
path?
Yeah. Yeah, I had that
Right?
discussion. I was talking with Mark from Ascension Experience as well, Mark Engel, the other day, the guy in New York, and I said exactly the same thing. It's like, yeah, that, you know, all that chosen ones and special and all the rest of it. Like, nah, I don't want anything that sounds like any kind of a cult or a sect or anything, or that we're special or in some way. It's like, okay, I'm just here doing my work. That's it.
Yeah, it's a crazy concept to wrap your head around. So let's say that there's X amount of knowledge that's out there, and it's infinite, as we all know, and and that information is being dumped onto society every single day. If this is new information, right, and I don't know what that actually means, being dumped in through a funnel where it's got to come through us to somebody else, but it's still infinite, right? Still for everybody. That statement has got me thinking, and not that I'm special or better than anybody, none of that, but it's like, okay, what are we supposed to do with this information we're getting when most people don't want to hear it? They're not ready. They're still looking to get into the bathtub, and we're jumping 100 miles offshore. Like, that's my struggle. Even with when people come at me and they're angry, right? And I'm like, okay. And I walk away and they want to have a conversation, and I'm like, I'm not going to have I'm like, we're not going to have this conversation. Like, okay, you can have whatever you talk, and you try to help people understand. Like, listen, that's their react. And people are, well, you got to defend yourself. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't really care what that person. Well, you need to make that point. You need to control the narrative. Right. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
I used to do that.
Well, in terms of like, we have learned some stuff, and I like it because every moment and every day is a lot more fun living this way, and pretty much nothing bugs me anymore. And so there's just a lot more fun and joy and feeling good, which is, you know, one of the main aims that Joshua says. But most people aren't interested or ready for this, as you say. But I find that people do quite often ask me questions that are like, somebody asked me a question the other day, which essentially was, I could see that really underneath the answer for them was around controlling conditions, that this person is really struggling with a number of business and not-for-profit, non-profit projects. And I can see that she's trying to control conditions. And the more she controls conditions, the harder it's all getting. And so she's asked me, how do you manage to juggle all these different gigs? And I haven't had that conversation with her, but I don't know what I will say to her. But essentially, as I see it, her problem is, well, you're trying to control conditions and all of these things and micromanage everything. So you are going to go nuts. And you wonder why people don't step up and take responsibility. Well, because you're actually filling that space completely. And so then I was talking to a niece of mine who's going through a divorce, and she made a number of statements which were all around worthiness. And I thought, okay, yep. And I could see it's like crystal clear. It's like, oh, okay, you got, you know, a significant dose of worthiness, and you believe some of what your soon-to-be ex is telling you about yourself, none of which is true, you know, because he's a fabulous young person. And so what I'm saying is those people will get a snippet of the Joshua work. They won't get the whole download, and they won't know where my thoughts came from. But I can see that in a small way, if I can convey some of those ideas to them, that may be a benefit to them.
I like that very, very much. I like that. Well, listen, it's my time. I got to jump on a call in 3 minutes, but
Yeah.
as
Let's go.
always,
Yep.
Rob, I love this, and I really
it's
appreciate.
It's great.
Thank you for.
See you same place, same time next week. But we'll see each other on Joshua Call in the meantime.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens on Monday.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, can't wait. Okay, have fun.
Bye.
See you, Jerry. Bye.